Welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. The world is shifting. It is becoming multipolar. BRICS has become a geopolitical force. China, Russia, India, Brazil, South Africa, along with other full members and partner states, together they challenge the dominance of the US-led world order. But now powerful voices in Washington are waking up and they're saying something very bold. If we can't beat BRICS, we will divide it. That is how you know that BRICS, the economic alliance, is increasingly perceived by Washington as a threat.
I told anybody wants to be in BRICS, that's fine, but we're going to put tariffs on your nation. Everybody dropped out. They're all dropping out of BRICS. BRICS was an attack on the dollar.
Now, I want to remind you that the BRICS bloc, by its own definition, is not anti-American. BRICS is the framework of a post-Western order. What distinguishes BRICS from, let's say, a Cold War alliance, a Cold War bloc, is that BRICS is not defined by opposition. It's not. It is pro-sovereignty, both politically and economically, and it stands for equality and cooperation. It stands for the global South that has been taken advantage of for centuries by powerful Western nations. BRICS now encompasses nearly half of the world's population and more than 40% of global GDP. That makes it more representative, more demographically diverse than the G7. However, now certain people in DC are on the search of a new monster to fight, and BRICS might just be the new target. In a recent article in Foreign Affairs, a leading U.S. magazine, former McCain advisor Richard Fontaine and Republican strategist Gibbs McKinley laid out what they see as in America's new playbook, as its strategy to defeat the BRICS bloc. They say break BRICS into two camps, in other words, divide and rule. Foreign Affairs writes, there is a new risk on the horizon, the emergence of the BRICS as a more active anti-Western bloc that is increasingly dominated by China and Russia. Unless the United States changes policy in the short term, it will pay for this realignment in the long term. According to the strategy, one camp, which is China and Russia, is already beyond reach, firmly opposed to Washington. But the other, which includes Brazil, India, and South Africa, the key players, remains winnable. And that's where the United States is likely to focus its efforts. The logic, of course, is very simple. If BRICS stays united, it could one day de-dollarize global trade, create alternative payment systems, and undermine U.S. financial dominance. Even the IMF's influence could weaken, and that's America's worst nightmare. Why, you may ask? Well, because with the decline of the dollar, Washington's capacity to wage economic warfare, to sanction and impose trade barriers and such, that will become virtually non-existent. So what's the plan? Fontaine and McKinley suggest giving each country, each member of the BRICS bloc, a reason to turn away from Beijing and Moscow. With Brazil, they say, partner on rare earth development and Latin American trade. With South Africa, support its regional ambitions in Africa. And with India, reignite tensions by quietly encouraging its rivalry with China. It's old-school geopolitics, of course, a 21st century version of divide and rule. Take a look here. When the BRICS is polarized, they write, it is less likely to oppose the United States' interests. But if the former faction takes hold, American power will suffer. The BRICS, for example, might lead a coordinated effort to de-dollarize trade and create alternative payment systems that erode the global dominance of the U.S. economic system, weakening a key pillar of American clout and the effectiveness of Washington's sanctions. So you see how this works, how it all ties into coercion. If the BRICS collectively invests more in alternative institutions, including its new development bank, or simply speaking, the BRICS Bank, and contingent reserve arrangements, existing US and European-led financial institutions, such as the International Monetary Fund, might lose their influence. China and Russia will also gain more opportunities to expand their spheres of influence in the global South, putting US interests in these regions at greater risk. Personally, I'm very, very skeptical that this approach will succeed. I think it is very, very unlikely that the BRICS members won't see right through it. For example, in the past 9-10 months, we've seen the United States impose extreme protectionist measures in the form of trade barriers and sanctions, and this has united full members of the bloc and BRIC partners alike, and they're actually seeking more coordination within the bloc to counter protectionist measures and to increase cross-border trade, to increase South-South cooperation, and to secure direct investments to support their domestic infrastructure. Will these nations catch the bait? I think it is very, very doubtful. Even the authors admit that it might not work, it might be too late. The world knows America's playbook too well by now. And few nations want to trade one hegemon for another. Still, Washington won't stop trying because for the United States, a fractured BRICS is far less dangerous than the united one. Foreign affairs rights, this is very important. Over the past decade, China and Russia have ramped up their efforts to stir their fellow BRICS members toward a worldview contrary to Washington's interests. China has become Brazil's top trade partner and supports the country's efforts to reduce its dependence on the US dollar. Russia has been selling massive amounts of oil to India, and both China and Russia have courted South Africa as a partner in resisting what Russian President Vladimir Putin has described as the colonialism of the US-led order. Meanwhile, the United States has strained its relations with friendly BRICS members. The US-Indian relationship has not been this chilly since 1998. Attention, when the United States sanctioned it for testing nuclear weapons. In September, Deputy Secretary of State Chris Lando said that the US-Brazilian relationship was at its darkest point in 2 centuries, and ties with South Africa are the most tenuous they've been since the end of the apartheid in 1994. So sanctions on top of sanctions apparently lead to quite a bit of confrontation. They lead to nations directly resisting Washington. Who would have thought, right? Apparently this is news to some experts. Competent diplomacy cannot be reduced to coercion, and I think this is something that many need to learn and to acknowledge. Unfortunately, that is not a popular view in Washington. In the end, the battle over BRICS isn't just about alliances, it is about control of the world's financial future and whether the global South will keep playing by America's rules or whether it will write its own. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comments below whether you are interested in this topic moving forward. I would love to create more content for you. If you are, just let me know in the comments below. I hope that you consider supporting my work. Become a subscriber on YouTube, Substack, and Patreon. You will find those platforms linked in the video description below. And enjoy the rest of your day. I will see you back here tomorrow. Bye for now.